This is Mr. Smith, and here's another video tutorial. This one on how to edit videos. Now, my go-to editor right now happens to be OpenShot, which is open source. It's 100% free, runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux. To be fair, if you are using a Mac, you're probably using iMovie. And iMovie is fine for most things. There's a few things that iMovie can't do well, and OpenShot does do well. So OpenShot still remains my go-to editor even if I am using a Mac. Let's go right into the program, which I already have installed. If you're in my computer lab, it's already installed on the computer that you're using right now. Now to start off, we have an empty library of project files because we haven't imported anything in yet. So we're going to go to File, and we're going to go down to Import Files. Simple enough. Now, I like to put all of my files that I'm going to be using in a project in the same folder. It just makes everything much easier for me to find what I need and for backing things up. Here's all the files that I want to use for this tutorial. I'm going to select all of them and click Open, and it'll import all of them at once. If for any reason any of the files can't be imported into OpenShot, it will give you an error message and say, hey, I can't take care of this file for you. Now, I happen to have 4 different kinds of files. I have a video, I have 2 images. One of them is a PNG file, one of them is an SVG file, but they're the same image otherwise. Made these in Inkscape. And I have an audio file. And I have a lot of tracks down here that I can drag these into. If it's up here, it's not in your video. It's only in your video if it's in one of these tracks in your timeline down here. And we can even change the scale of our timeline. This doesn't change how long your video is. It just changes how much of it you can see at any given time, so you can zoom in to do some fine detail work, or you can zoom out to get a better idea of the big picture for the video. I am going to take this video clip and drag this into, let's put it in track 2. Which track you put it in doesn't matter so much, with the exception of if it's higher up in the track number, it's going to be more likely to be seen by your audience. So right now I have this clip in track 2. If I drag my title, oh wow, what an awesome title, and put it in track 3, which is above it, then that's going to show up on top. If instead I took this clip and put this in track 4 above it, well, both of them are still here. It's just you're not going to be able to see the title because the video clip's above that. Why would I do that? Well, sometimes maybe I have some B-roll. Maybe I have a scene where I have 2 cameras and one person's talking to the other person, and I want to show the other person nodding in response to the first person talking. Well, I could take that clip of the person nodding and just put it right on top without having to cut from one to the other and get the audio out of one and put it in the other. This is actually much easier in that regard. It's one of the nice things about having a multi-track editor as opposed to things like iMovie, which is simpler, easier to understand, but harder to do more advanced stuff like that. I have this audio that I can put down here, and now this will play underneath everything. This is probably going to be too loud. So if I click on this little arrow right here, or right click anywhere on the clip, both of them do the same thing in this regard, I've got a lot of options here. I recommend playing with them to see what they do, but in this case, volume. I can undo whatever edits I've done with volume. This is great if you screw something up, let me tell you. I could have it fade in at the beginning. I could have it fade out at the end. I could adjust the audio for the entire clip, and this way it's not going to drown out my voice. Which of these options you should pick really depends on how loud your audio tracks are. It's more of an art than a science. So I'm going to click one of these, and that'll probably be fine. But if it's not, I can go back in and change it. Now let's pretend I made a huge mistake in my video somewhere. I was recording and I screwed up a line, or maybe my cat walked across my keyboard. This may have actually just happened. I can get rid of that mistake by first finding it in my timeline. It's a good idea to do that first because otherwise you don't know where you're going to be clicking it later. And then I switch to the cutting tool right here, the trim tool. I can zoom in again with the slider right here to make sure I'm getting fine control. With these scissors selected, anywhere I click, it's going to split the clip into 2 separate clips. So let's say that this is the end of the mistake, where after I realized I'd made the mistake, I paused for a moment and then did the whole thing again. I can click here. You have to unselect the scissors. This is a very common mistake, as in I do this all the time. I forget to unselect the scissors, and then when I go to click on the clip I want to delete, I just keep cutting it into smaller pieces, which is not going to help anyone. So instead, click on the scissors to unselect them. Then you can click on the clip you don't want, press the delete key on your keyboard, and now we can drag these clips back together. In iMovie, when you do something like this, it will push the clips together on their own because it's nonlinear, so it assumes you don't want any large gaps. This is not going to do that because it's going to think maybe you do want there to be a gap there. Maybe the editing you're doing is slightly different than that, but we can drag these together. It sort of snaps together once you get close enough, and now it's going to play seamlessly. You might see a small jump from one clip to the next. For this tutorial, that's not a big deal. It might be a larger deal for what you're working on depending on the video that you're editing. That's another tutorial. Now, adding titles. I made a title using Inkscape, and I do recommend using Inkscape for making things because it is very easy to use, all things considered, and gives you a lot of control. However, there are a lot of title options that are built into the program. I recommend using the generic titles. I don't recommend using animated or 3D titles. Sometimes that works well, sometimes it doesn't. It's still under development, but these titles work fairly decently. Your mileage may vary. So I am going to pick just one of these, and I'm going to have the line be very, very nice. And I click Save, and it's added it in. Now, I didn't change a lot of stuff with this, and that's actually going to be a problem that comes back to bite me. If I drag this down and put it in, you don't see anything. Why? Because I didn't change any of the settings. So I'm going to go back up here, and this is after I've added it into my clip. I right-click, Edit Title, and now let's change some settings. I could change the text if I wanted to. Maybe I made a typo in here somewhere. I can change the font. Please change the font. Please always change the font. Never go with the default font. Even if you just pick the next one down, don't pick the one that's built in. That's like using Comic Sans. You just don't do it. Okay. So I could just hit save now, and we will see my awesome title. Now maybe I don't want to see my text superimposed on top of my video. Maybe I want to have the screen go black and have my text there. I can mess with that too. Going to go back to Edit Title, and we can change a few other things. I can change my text color, and we can even change the background color. As soon as we change the background color, it's going to become opaque. Hit save, and now, oh look, my awesome title. And I can have this fade in, fade out, etc. I can do all these various things. Now let's pretend I've gone through, I've edited my video, everything is in there just the way I want it to be, and I'm ready to export it. To do that, we're going to go up to either this little button right here, which is hard to see in my version. In some versions of OpenShot, it's going to be bright red, and we can click on that. We could also go to File and Export Project. Saving is useful. Saving lets us come back and edit it later. I do recommend saving it, but that will be a file that is only openable in OpenShot and only if you have all of your other files in a folder right where you wanted them to be before. Exporting is going to be what turns it into a file that other people can see. So I go to Export Video. It's going to ask me what to name it. It's going to ask me for a location. I always save my videos in my video folder because otherwise I'm looking for them anywhere else, and that's annoying. Untitled Project. I'm going to change that to something that's a bit more descriptive of what the project is. And there are a lot of formats that you can pick from. There's a lot of subcategories you can pick from. I recommend not messing with any of that. The default is going to work in almost any situation, so just leave it the way it is. It usually is pretty good with that. And I'm going to click Export Video. And this progress bar is going to go across. And once it gets all the way across, I will have a video that I can share with others. There's a lot more to this program, but I'm going to save that for future tutorials. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.